The South Dakota Eviction Notice. What is an eviction notice? Eviction notice, or notice to quit, is a letter sent by the landlord to the tenant notifying them that they should either take or stop a certain action or vacate the rented premises. Eviction notice can be of two types: conditional, when a tenant is given time to remedy the breach of the lease, or unconditional, when a landlord terminates the lease without any alternative options for a tenant. What should an eviction notice include? Information about the tenant and the landlord. The reason for sending the notice. The date by which the tenant should take or stop a certain action. The consequences of non-compliance. The date and way of notice delivery, and the landlord's signature in the form of certificate of service attached to the notice. How to evict a tenant in South Dakota. Non-payment notice. The South Dakota law set a 3-day grace period for tenants failing to pay rent due. If they fail to pay rent within this period and the landlord is about to start an eviction proceeding, a 3-day notice to quit should be sent by them. Non-compliance notice. If the tenant violates other terms of lease, the landlord is not required by law to grant the tenant the time to correct the issue. What if the tenant fails to comply? If the tenant fails to comply with the rules of the lease, the landlord might file a complaint with the South Dakota District or Magistrate Court. The filing fee is $70 statewide. Then the tenant should get the summons and the complaint prior to the hearing by a person authorized by South Dakota law. The law also requires the authorized person to make at least 2 attempts to send the complaint to the tenant within 30 days of the date the summons was issued by the court. In order to contest the eviction hearing, the tenant has 4 days to send an answer to the court after the service of the summons. If it was served by publication, the tenant has 30 days of the date the summons was published. If the tenant is not able to meet the deadline, they might request a 14-day continuance. The tenant's failure to contest the eviction in the court might result in a judgment in favor of the landlord by default. If the landlord wins the case, the tenant will have to move out according to the execution of possession issued by the court. The state law does not specify the period during which the tenant has to leave the rental property, which is why the tenant should be prepared to move out immediately.